History's strange, it's alien, and it won't give us what we would like to have.
Imagine the Capitol dome under a stormy sky. That is the spirit of the election of 1800, a moment Thomas Jefferson later said was as real a revolution in the principles of our government as that of '76 was in its form. And he was right. What unfolded that year was a constitutional stress test that nearly broke the young republic, yet ultimately proved its strength. To understand why the election went sideways, you have to go back to Article 2 of the Constitution. Under the original Electoral College design, each elector cast 2 undifferentiated votes for president. No separate vote for vice president, no party tickets, nothing. The runner-up simply became vice president. It worked fine when everyone pretended political parties did not exist. But by 1796, those parties were very real. The Federalists backed John Adams, and the Democratic Republicans rallied around Thomas Jefferson. The result was awkward at best, hazardous at worst. A president and vice president from opposing factions forced to serve side by side. By 1800, the two parties were locked in what might be called a partisan Cold War. Foreign entanglements made everything worse. Federalists leaned toward Britain, Republicans toward France. Congress had passed the Alien and Sedition Acts, jailing critics of the Adams administration. Jefferson and Madison had responded with the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions, hinting that states could nullify federal laws. The temperature was rising, and nobody was pretending otherwise. Then came an unlikely twist: the artisans of New York and Philadelphia. Jefferson's victory depended heavily on urban mechanics and small manufacturers who had been squeezed by Federalist-controlled banks. Those banks tightened credit, raised security standards, and made life miserable for smaller tradesmen. Resentment grew, and political loyalties shifted. Into that opening stepped Aaron Burr, with a gambit worthy of Wall Street legend. Burr chartered the Manhattan Company to provide clean water, but buried inside the charter was a clause allowing it to operate as a bank. Once launched, it funneled credit to the very artisans the Federalists had alienated. That move flipped New York, and flipping New York changed the entire national election. But victory brought catastrophe. Jefferson and Burr, running on the same Republican ticket, tied at 73 electoral votes each. Under the old constitutional rules, the House of Representatives, still controlled by defeated Federalists, had to pick the president. Each state got a single vote. 9 were needed to win, and across 35 ballots, neither man reached 9. Rumors of militias mobilizing, whispered talk of civil war, even schemes to put John Marshall in as a substitute president, all hung in the air. The Republic was truly on edge. The deadlock finally broke thanks to an unlikely figure: Alexander Hamilton. Despite despising Jefferson's politics, Hamilton distrusted Burr even more. In a series of letters that could charitably be called scorching, Hamilton urged his fellow Federalists to back Jefferson as the less dangerous choice. On the 36th ballot, several Federalists abstained, letting Jefferson reach the magic number. Jefferson became president, Burr became vice president, and the system barely held. The transition that followed was quiet and peaceful. Adams slipped out of Washington before the inauguration. Jefferson, in his address, reminded Americans that we are all Republicans, we are all Federalists, a call for unity that set the tone for the new administration. But the crisis exposed a fatal flaw in the Constitution, so Congress acted. The 12th Amendment was passed and ratified by 1804, creating separate ballots for president and vice president. That simple fix ensured that no running mates could ever tie again. The final cost, of course, was personal. Hamilton's role in blocking Burr fueled their long-standing rivalry, culminating in the duel of July 11, 1804, where Burr fatally wounded Hamilton and effectively ended his own political career. The echoes of 1800 reached straight to that tragic morning in Weehawken. In the end, the revolution of 1800 proved that the American constitutional order could bend without breaking. It showed that peaceful transfers of power were possible even when politics were bitter and dysfunctional, and it established a precedent that would become one of the defining strengths of the United States. The system survived its own flaws, corrected them, and moved forward, a reminder that self-government is always a work in progress, and sometimes its greatest victories are simply the ones where the country pulls back from the edge.
Check out more stories from history at davedoeshistory.org.